We really dove into the world of franchising today. I think many of us are used to Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, etc. Like all these bigger brands.
I had a grandfather that was a real estate attorney and did play real life Monopoly and bought a lot of buildings for his clients and himself.
The level of tenant that you're bringing in, where if you buy a $700,000 property in a great neighborhood that you can Airbnb, you're likely going to be able to, you may have to put more down on that property, but you might, the fruits of your labor on the appreciation might show, and then you might be able to get more cash flow from a short-term rental basis.
You watch enough Shark Tank, you know, is there a need? Are you really filling a solution, solving a problem? But you're all by yourself. You're out on an island. And it's okay. You can do that.
I don't know the ins and outs from marketing, sales, hiring, recruiting, HR, whatever. Like, there's a lot of things that are all-encompassing within a business.
So I represent about 800 brands in every industry at every investment level. I have financing. I have, you want an accountant, you want attorneys, whatever.
Do some of the hiring and some of the oversight, but like it can be something that you kind of do on the side, even with your full-time job.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys, Ryan and Corey, here with another episode for you. Today we had an interesting episode, a very fun one, actually, and different than most of recent date. But we had a gentleman named Lance Graulich on the show. He's known as the king of franchising. He is the CEO of Ion Franchising, an industry-leading franchise consulting and development group that represents over 800 brands and businesses across the U.S. and maybe even further than that. But we really dove into the world of franchising today. I think many of us are used to Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, etc. Like all these bigger brands, but there's a world of many other sectors, and we went into that. And we also talked a lot about, how people can leverage investing in a franchise while keeping their job, or what type of franchise is right for you based on your risk tolerance and dollars that you can deploy. So we really went A to Z in franchising, and it's semi-top level, but really kind of tried to dig in a little bit when it came to specific questions regarding real estate and how they parlay into franchising. So yeah, fun episode overall.
It was really fun. Lance is you can tell he's been around the block, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can tell Ryan and I are not in the same room. We had a snowstorm in Philly, so we're recording separately for the first time in a while, but it worked out great. Lance had one of the things that I wanted to mention as we do this intro is that he had all these ideas for like wellness and what were some other ones, right? Wellness, and
power washing,
yeah,
home care,
mosquito. So stuff that you never really thought were franchises. And it's also another kind of way that you can not really park your cash. It's kind of like semi-automated, but you hear about car washes online, and you hear about these businesses that are like they can run without you as the owner being like doing the day-to-day. I mean, that's really what the franchising model is. It's like you hire a GM sometimes, and then you can, do some of the hiring and some of the oversight, but like it can be something that you kind of do on the side, even with your full-time job. And some of these entry fees to get in here are like 25 grand, 50 grand, some of the bigger ones are 100, 200, $500,000. But I feel like it's something that, not that you and I would do it now, but people that are listening, it's another avenue. It's like investing in a syndication, but a little bit less passive than that, but you can own the actual business and also parlay it into something that you like too. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Actually, my head was kind of turning a little bit too, because obviously we invest in real estate and in a bunch of different forms. We've done, it feels like almost everything from
we've tried a lot.
Flip to syndication to Airbnb, long-term rentals. We've done a lot in the 4+ years that we've been doing this. But for me, I thought this was kind of would be a cool parlay to also do something within the real estate field. Like we always provide solutions for people. Like the next thing that we're working on is creative financing, right? We haven't really dove into that and kind of unleashed our plan of attack here to our listeners, but that's what we're getting into. And I thought it would be interesting to have something like a plumbing and heating company or a roofing company, something that involves real estate, right? So like there's something that's not going away, and that's housing, right? Like obviously there's a shortage right now of, the supply, but it's something that some people are always going to need help with. And so if you can get into a market and you find there's an extreme need for some specific service like that within a market, you could be able to parlay that within your real estate business and use it as a referral system, full cycle. So my head was kind of turning a little bit there. And There's a bunch of different things he was mentioning that I was not interested in at all. And then others I was like, whoa, this is badass. Like, this is something that I could see myself doing.
Yeah.
So
There's a franchise model, kind of what he was saying, for everyone too. And Lance does these services for free, which I thought was really, he works off a model of like recruiting, where the firms, the franchises are the ones that are paying him to bring people in and to grow their franchise. So it's cool. So people that are listening, you can DM him. We put it in there, DM him Juice on Instagram. You can find him Lance, Graulich, and chat with him, because he'll do it for free, and he'll get you potentially into a franchising model, or not, or you can just have a conversation with him to see if it's a good fit for you. But it was pretty interesting stuff, and it was a new kind of different episode that we don't do all the time.
Yeah. So I think overall this is one that people are going to like a lot. It's a little bit different, as Corey mentioned, but it's something that we've been interested in. I'm sure you've thought about it as you've driven into drive-through wherever you go. But there's also, keep in mind, a world of different franchises that you probably don't even think about, and that's kind of what we tried to bring to light in this episode. So without further ado, I think we'll bring in Lance and have him run the show. Lance, officially welcome to the Weekly Juice podcast. Corey and I are so excited to have you on the show. As I mentioned, we have not yet had a king of franchising, I'll say, on the show yet. So we are thrilled to have you here and pick your brain today on all things franchising. So thanks for joining us.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be the first franchise guy on, and the king has entered your kingdom.
Love it. I don't think I could have said it any better. So if you could kind of give a brief background on yourself and the story, how you actually got into the franchising world, because as I mentioned, it's not something we've quite heard about. We always see maybe a Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Starbucks, everything floating around. We understand franchising a little bit, but let us know how you got into that whole world.
It's funny because to your point, everybody seems to know something about franchising, because it's always those retail facing buildings, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, whatever, maybe Great Clips and Supercuts, all these retail brands. There's an entire franchise world that is kind of like the underworld, if you will, that people don't even know about. I mean, I have a franchise, $68,000 investment, and people are netting $500,000, $600,000 a year working from their house. But we'll get into that later. So we'll talk about the underworld. So I grew up in New York. Dad was on Wall Street. I had a grandfather that was a real estate attorney and did play real life Monopoly, and bought a lot of buildings for his clients and himself, and did well. And then I had another grandfather that was an immigrant, a Polish immigrant, nobody could ever understand, but somehow created a supermarket empire throughout Brooklyn and Queens over about 30 years. And so I got into that entrepreneurial family, because, guys, isn't that the real question? How do people become entrepreneurs? So a lot of people are raised to just get a job, and I was not wired that way. In fact, my dad wanted me to get a job so I can experience the real world first. And he said, don't worry, that won't last long. You're not exactly employable. Dad, what does that mean? I'm not employable. Yeah, you don't listen to anybody else. You're going to do your own damn thing. So really what I ended up doing, I did do Wall Street with Dad. I did dabble in real estate, but I realized I like the people aspects of things. I know that's a crazy thing. Most people don't want to deal with people. And moved west, joined another relative, and we built a TGI Fridays franchise group from $0 to $225 million in 5 years. Yeah, there were a lot of acquisitions. There was a lot of new development as well. But I really would like to say I got my MBA in franchising at that point and said, man, this is pretty cool. I'm doing somebody else's blueprint. I have support and resources. This is like a giant freaking mastermind of people that are smarter than me. And then from there, I propelled that to me owning my own franchise like Wingstop and partnering with my friend and did Krispy Kreme. We were Krispy Kreme franchisees in the early days in 2 states. Then I created my own famous brand now called Pink Box Donuts. It's famous on the West Coast. Started in Vegas in 2011. And that was a business I created from scratch and with a partner. And I did all the work. And really, that was 2011. And then I sold my piece several years later. But, guys, I'm a builder. I'm not a maintainer. Love to make my money, get out. Plenty of people like to hold on to things. I didn't hold on to my first wife. I picked a bad one there. So we can talk about all those bad stories. But really, I had a lot of friends. I was a top 1% franchisee at Wingstop. I was president of the Franchise Advisory Council. Same type of thing at Krispy Kreme. So I love the world of franchising. I'm like, you know what? How do I help people get into franchising? Because I don't feel like I had an appropriate path. I suffered a lot, bounced around a lot, trying to find my way. And I became a franchise broker. Friends of mine pointed out to me that's a thing. Didn't know what the hell a franchise broker was. So I represent about 800 brands in every industry at every investment level. I have financing. I have you want an accountant, you want attorneys, whatever. So, last year was my best year ever. I do this sort of I call it my retirement. My podcast, Ion Franchising, is hot. Last I checked, top 1% of all podcasts. I'm sure it's the top franchise podcast. Talk to franchise founders, franchisees that are successful. I have a really cool brand new series called Franchise Envy, where I talk to super successful franchisees about how they did it and ask them all the questions that all the listeners are wondering about. How'd you do it? How'd you do it? What'd you look at before? Why a franchise? And we could dive into, guys, things like why a franchise, obviously.
Yeah. Well, that was one of my questions I have for you, Lance. I think maybe
knew that.
Yeah. Maybe let's
slow it down a little bit.
Well, I'll take a step back, because I think what a lot of people think about when they think about getting into entrepreneurship is starting their own business. And then it's like, okay, I either have to have an idea or I have to build on an existing business that I know exists, but I still have to start my own thing. I have to start my own name, my LLC, my company. I have to get employees. Can you maybe high level explain what the franchising model is? Because people probably don't even realize they can be business owners without having to start their own business. The business actually exists for them already.
And Corey, such a great question. I always tell people, look, it's America. You can start your own business if you have an idea that needs to be born. Notice I said needs to be born. You watch enough Shark Tank, is there a need? Are you really filling a solution, solving a problem? But you're all by yourself. You're out on an island, and it's okay. You can do that. Franchising is just much easier. Franchising, in a lot of cases, gets a bad rap because there's this perception of fees. That you have to pay a franchise fee. Well, somebody did all this work. They have all kinds of intellectual property and systems and people. The average great franchise I represent has an awful lot of people that are supporting the hell out of you as you get into a brand. But let's talk about the basics. Franchise is just a licensing relationship to use somebody else's name, their trademark, their system, and have a business of your own. It's your own LLC, corporation, what have you, but you're just following someone else's system. So what most people understand, having seen the movie The Founder and things like that, they think of Ray Kroc and McDonald's. And McDonald's was amazing in the old days. You buy some real estate, you put a business on it, it works, which is also why I love talking to real estate investors. They understand the aspects of that investment right there, and it worked very nicely with real estate investors. But, real estate investors, how do they get started? Sometimes hard money loans. That's how I did it. Hard money loans, and you understand the after repair value in a flip, and it's okay to pay those higher fees. Similarly, a lot of people are using SBA loans to get out of their miserable job and get into a franchise. And I have tons of people that get just a $150,000 SBA loan. You put your 20% down, in a lot of cases less than that these days, on the SBA Express $150,000 deal, and you're in business. And it's okay that you're paying a little bit higher interest rate with the prime rate still being up. We heard it's coming down later this year, right?
We did, yeah.
But in the meantime, it's okay to pay a little bit higher interest rate because you're going to get the result that you desire, building equity in a business. I just had a guy that had a garage door franchise sell for almost $100 million. Yeah, you heard that right. $100 million. Guy didn't know anything about garage doors, but got one territory, eventually got another territory. Like a lot of your listeners are collecting doors and flipping properties. Yep. My daughter's boyfriend's family in Vegas has, last I checked, I think 1,700 houses. But anyway, that's another
Not
story.
a bad,
Well-
not a bad future in-law there, buddy.
Yeah, but that's another story. So hopefully that answers the preliminary,
Yeah.
Corey.
It definitely does. I think one of the reasons why Ryan and I wanted to speak with you is because we know somebody who owns a Rita's Water Ice. I don't know them as well as Ryan does. And then I had somebody that I know that was very interested in a Waffle House. And the reason why I brought this up is because
They
I
don't
heard...
franchise, though.
What's that? They're not
Waffle
a franchise?
House isn't franchising.
Okay, so then maybe I misheard. So let me ask you this: if people, what you really do, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is if people come to you and they want to start a franchise, do you help fit them with the types of franchises that might fit their business needs?
Yes.
Is that really what a franchising broker does? Hey, I have X amount of dollars to put down. I live in this part of the country. I want to do X, Y, Z. Hey, Lance,
Bingo.
what do you think the best franchise is for me to start?
That is exactly what I do. And, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So I have people call me all the time and say, I heard you got my brother a franchise. What should I do in Cleveland, Ohio? And I said, let's have a conversation first so I can find out about you, because any business, whether it's real estate investing or buying a franchise, investing in franchise, or starting your own, you need some skills and you need to be able to work. Think about hiring a personal trainer. Why is it that some people hire an expert to get them in shape, and the result is they're not in shape? It's because
They're not willing to do the things that are necessary on their own to get them to the place that puts them into good shape, right?
Bingo.
Despite what people may be telling you to do, you still have to do it, right?
Exactly. And no matter what you do, there's still work. Every guru on the internet's talking about laundromats and car washes and storage facilities, everything that doesn't involve any major work that hopefully anybody can do. There's a lot better investments, lower capital required and higher, exit strategy, higher exit, so to speak, in the first place. So at the end of the day, you come to me and there's a process. If you'd like, I'll lay out the process right now.
Sure.
Please do. First call. The first call is all about you. I obviously have to establish some trust. I always tell people, trust the process. Throughout the process, you're trusting, but you're verifying. I'm like the warm-up band. I'm getting you excited about the opportunities, but I also want you to refer 100 people to me in your lifetime after you're successful with me. I recently started collecting testimonials, and I'll be unloading a whole bunch of those all over the internet as well. I had a guy that recently worked with multiple other franchise consultants, and it wasn't successful. And that is part of his testimonial. So call one, get to know you. And, if any of you watch the goofy TV show, The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, my wife always watches that, and it's like a train wreck that you can't keep your eyes off of. So I watch it, but the number one word, most common word I hear used often in getting to know somebody in that silly TV show, kind of like me a little bit, is vulnerability. You got to be a little vulnerable with me. So if you've had a job for 30 years that you can't stand and you feel like you've really missed out on stuff, and now's your chance to jump into something, I need to know those things. I need to understand your risk tolerance. There are people that, look, when I was at Wingstop, I was store number 60, but there was a guy that was nuts, and he was franchisee number 1. It was a shit show when I joined, and it was store number 60. So what do you think his risk tolerance was, being number 1? Wasn't a sharp brand like it is today. In those days, I had the vision it was going to go place. I got lucky. Go places. I got kind of lucky. So get to know you, understand your deepest, darkest fears, your goals. Where do you want to live in 10 years if you have desires to move, things like that. And then I just start doing territory checks based on your what, not your why. A lot of people talk about your why, right? What's everybody's why? Everybody's why is, I want to have all the time to do whatever the hell I want to do, and I want all the money to do whatever the hell I want to do. It doesn't have to be $1 billion, but 10 million might be enough. I want to have all of my time freedom and money freedom. That's everybody's why. I want to go to my kid's soccer game. I don't want to miss anything. So I focus on your what. What investment? How much cash do you want to put into it? 50 grand? Great. I got brands for you. You want to get a loan? Great. You have 100. I had a family worth 800 million. They said, I got 5 million. What do I do with it? They got into some amazing automotive brands. What is your cash investment? Do you want a loan? What is the role that you're going to play? So if you guys were going to do something, you're going to be active in the business? Probably not. Most real estate investors want to be what we call in franchising semi-absentee owners. A goofy term just means that you're going to be a part-time owner. You're going to spend 10 to 20 hours a week working on the business, but not necessarily in the business. Looking at financial statements, maybe doing some hiring, talking to your GM or manager, whoever's running your business for you. And that's the other part. Your role, your investment gets into any of your particular interests. You know, guys, when I was young, I'm 57 now. When I was really young, everybody always talked about following your passion. That's all a bunch of bullshit, in my opinion, these days. Now, if you're truly passionate about wellness, I'll get you a wellness franchise. I'll get you something great. A lot of great wellness franchises today. But normally speaking, people just want to make money so they could spend their time doing their passion, mountain climbing and kayaking or whatever it might be, going on vacation, managing a business remotely. So passion isn't what it used to be. Remember the old days? Like my mom loved kids. She became a teacher and eventually a school principal. Paid her decent, but you're not going to get rich doing that. So I started doing territory checks. 48 hours later, generally speaking, takes me a little time. We have a call. Presentation day. I present the brands that I found. Typically, it's 4 or 5. I always say 4. I give you a 5th, a bonus. If I get lucky, you say, introduce me to that brand. I make an introduction behind the scenes. The brand gets excited. They see my name attached to you guys. Have a first call. And that's like a coffee date. It gets more serious, like meet the parents, like, when you guys are dating, meet the parents, corporate team. And let me tell you, the 2 biggest things that the listeners can take away from the integrity in the franchise process. So you have me as your advocate. I get paid like a recruiter by the brand, so they don't pay me anything directly. I'm a free resource. But the beauty of the process is you're going to get a copy of a franchise disclosure document. There's 23 items in there. Franchising is regulated by the federal government. Item 19 is the earnings claim. The earnings claim, like from my favorite air conditioning franchise, the average franchisee is doing like about $4 million in revenue. So you start to learn some of the things that are going to fit or not fit within your business plan, so to speak. And as you get deeper, you have an opportunity to speak to existing franchisees. The brands will actually put you through that validation process. They'll either hand you a list of the existing franchisees and say, call whoever you want, or they'll have group calls to, make it easier for you. And at the end of the day, when you can speak to 5 different franchisees about their experiences and know that they love it, they feel supported, they're making money, they would do it over again, all those good things, you've found the right brand. And Discovery Day or Meet the Team Day is a process within that where you usually either get on a plane or take a car ride to go visit the brand, and you get to meet everybody, break bread. It was either Warren Buffett or Steve Jobs that used to always say, "No, I'm not hiring any corporate executives unless I have a meal with them and see how they treat the server or waiter, waitress in the restaurant," and things like that. That's what Meet the Team Day or Discovery Day is really all about. It's a two-way street. Everybody's looking for red flags. And matter of fact, I have 2 different people at Discovery Day for the same home care brand right now, home health care, which is every day another 15,000 people turn 65. Could talk about that being a hot segment. So really, I am their advocate all along the way, like I said. And at some point in this process, I had a buddy call me today. He's a CEO of a brand, young guy that's invested in some real estate as well, bought 4 territories of a brand called Rolling Suds. Power washing brand. Sounds goofy. People listening are like, power washing brand? I can go to Home Depot and buy a power washer. Well, you can go to the market and get some burger patties and buns too, but it doesn't mean it's McDonald's. Rolling Suds, they disclose numbers that show the average truck and you buy as many trucks as you want. The average truck's going to produce almost 400,000 in revenue, with corporate locations doing 35% net. But even if you dumb that down to a 25% net, how many trucks do you want to net $1 million a year? Pretty easy to figure out.
This is interesting to me, Lance, because there's a lot of businesses out there where people start, like you said, from your passion. You don't really know if it's going to be something that's profitable or if it really works. You may love it and you may be somewhat profitable and have a great experience because you do love doing it. But to know that there are all these businesses that are out there that are proven over and over and over again at different locations that they are profitable is something that's pretty cool. I'm wondering, let's say like Ryan and I came to you with $100,000 or something. He said, Lance, we have $100,000. I'm not suggesting that you would have an answer for what we do, but I'm curious about how the money gets made. Is that your upfront investment for, locking down a location for, know, like how does it actually work in terms of somebody that's interested? And then how do you begin to see that return on investment? If you just give it like an example of what one company, I don't know, Wingstop is a good one.
So I'll give you an example. Homewell. Homewell is a home care brand. My guy's actually at Home Helpers, but Homewell has a special deal now where you don't even pay the $50,000 franchise fee. They'll defer it. So you have to have some money for marketing, but generally speaking on home care, it's about $150,000 investment. Now, this is where the confusion sometimes come in. There's two facets to what you're paying the brand, or really three, when you get into any franchise. Number one, you're paying an upfront franchise fee. That's like what I call the mastermind fee. You pay a fee to join the brand, and you only pay that once. Some of them do have a renewal, a discounted renewal 10 years from now, but you pay a $40,000 franchise fee, $50,000 franchise fee. It varies depending on the brand. And you're in. You get the keys to the kingdom. When you're open and operating, you're going to pay a marketing fee, which is something you'd be paying for marketing if you're doing your own business anyway. So that's not a big deal. And then you're also paying a royalty. That's where the brands actually make money. And the royalty could be 5%, 6%. Brands like Subway, it's like 12% these days. But the bottom line is, the idea is, if you can't make more money in a franchise, a lot more money, even after paying royalty, you probably are not running the business right, or you picked the wrong franchise. So when you work with me, that's not going to be a problem. So the answer to your question is, if you had $100,000 and you wanted to get in something like Homewell or Home Helpers, you would pay the franchise fee, roughly $50,000, and you would get a loan. If you didn't have any other cash you wanted to put in it, you would get a loan. You get an SBA loan. Partnerships partners can do that. You'll both be on the loan, and you get a $150,000 SBA loan. But you're going to pay the cash. That's your cash injection. You get some of that money back when the loan closes, and you're in business. So it's really that easy. Now, the SBA process, for anybody listening that's done it before, cumbersome. The government gives away money, but there's a lot of paperwork. I have tons of lenders. Not all the lenders are the same. I've had people get rejected one day from one lender and accepted by the next lender a day later. Not the same. Probably don't have enough time to go through why, but they're just not the same.
Cool. Are there franchises that you recommend over other ones? I mean, maybe it's completely dependent on the person and what their needs are, but I'm curious if you have, ones that you're really liking right now that stand out. I mean, I think it's good frame of reference for people that might be listening.
So I mentioned Rolling Suds already. I do a lot of Rolling Suds deals. The power washing brand, amazing business. They have franchisees doing $40,000 in revenue in literally the second month, because they're a marketing machine. They have about 5 different sources for their marketing. But you have to be an active owner. They want people that either already have an empire and have a team, which they have some franchisees like that already have other businesses, and can deploy someone that has worked for them. They don't just want you to hire somebody off the street. Now, if you don't have that empire yet, and it's your first business, no problem. They want you to be an active owner. That just means that you're working, could be doing business development. You don't have to actually be operating the power washer. By the way, these guys had on Instagram a drone cleaning a water tower for rolling suds. They actually had a drone cleaning a water tower. It was the coolest thing I ever saw.
I think I've seen some of these power washing companies that some of them do. And I don't know if it's this one, probably not, but like they do door-to-door sales. They'll walk up and say, "Oh, hey, I'll power wash your." I've seen a bunch of that on Instagram.
Yeah, they don't do that. There are
Yeah.
franchises that still do some door-to-door as
Yeah.
part of their grassroots stuff. And we could segue right into that. Best Choice Roofing. Best Choice Roofing is a phenomenal franchise. Average franchisee there is doing like, $3.5 million. I think it's actually close to $4 million these days as well in roofing, and it's under a $200,000 investment to get in.
Wow.
I had a guy in LA just buy three territories in LA for Best Choice. They just opened up California. But and roofing is hot. There's a few other really good franchises. But what franchises do is they create this corporation, if you will, this really high integrity business unit where a typical roofer across the country, the chuck in a truck, stand in a van type thing, they're not very sophisticated. They don't really answer their phone. I mean, franchising has everything dialed in. They all have call centers. The best franchises do have call centers and amazing marketing. So all you're doing is essentially fulfillment.
It's funny that you say that, Lance.
You're hiring the employees.
I'll let you go in a sec, Ryan. I know you probably have something, but it's funny that you say that, Lance, because I just had two separate experiences. One with a roofer who I know is it's him, maybe a couple employees, and he's been fine. But to get in touch with him, it's like kind of like, jumping through hoops where I just had gutters replaced, and it's like you can tell I speak to somebody different every single time I call them, but I know that they're a franchise, and I know that at least when they say they're going to show up to something, they are. There's no chasing anybody down. So it's I think one of the points that you made that our listeners can realize there's probably a lot more franchises out there than we even think of. Like
More.
There's so many. Yeah. I didn't even realize, like, I'm thinking, okay, it's gotta be retail. It's gotta be a Subway, or it's gotta be a Wingstop. And in reality, there's businesses of all types, shapes, and forms. So Ryan, I know you probably had a question. I didn't know if I didn't.
Yeah, actually, a couple things. One, I do want to see if you can kind of take us through a couple other franchises that, maybe off the grid that not people know about that are very successful. But to parlay into this question, we have a lot of people, a lot of listeners that, they have some cash set aside, but they still have their W-2 jobs. And they're thinking, hey, I need to get into real estate investing in order to build up some cash flow, eventually leave my W-2 job, supplement that income, then be a business owner of my own and invest in properties. Now, this seems like another avenue for them, which is great. So can you talk about 100%. People leveraging their money while keeping their day job and investing in franchises?
Yeah, and again, I have plenty of people that do exactly that. It really depends. The guys you're talking about that are doing real estate investing or thinking about that right now and have the people skills and the leadership skills and the ability to build something. Because there's some guys that are engineer types that aren't, they're squeamish when it comes to building, out of Best Choice Roofing, because maybe they're not really good at hiring at the moment. That doesn't mean they can't learn that skill or be taught that skill. There is a little bit of a learning curve. So, but there are more franchises today that are incredibly friendly to the semi-absentee, where a guy's keeping his job or she is keeping her job. We have a lot of ladies more than ever. And by the way, for everybody listening, there's a lot of younger people getting into franchise. Years ago, it was 50 years old and it was a guy. Now it's like I have more 35-year-old men and women than ever before looking at franchises. It's pretty incredible. But there are just so many home service brands, that category, because it's a need, not a want, completely recession-proof or recession-friendly, recession-resistant. And it's just about you being able to keep that job if you have a little bit of flexibility. 10 to 20 hours a week is, again, what we define as semi-absentee ownership. But would you have time to truly manage your manager? And a lot, because of technology, guys, 30 years ago, this wasn't how it is or how it was. Because of technology, owners can manage some sort of dashboard and know that their team has done a certain amount of bids today if they're a home improvement brand. You can track their productivity. Great franchises have a lot of wonderful systems in place for people to be semi-absentee owners. In a way, the systems that you have for being a real estate investor, to know what's your schedule. If I'm doing a flip, how many weeks do we have left? What are we doing today? Are we doing rough-in for plumbing? Or we just tore out a whole kitchen? I mean, whatever. It's similar in your business. You need to be able to track and understand what's going on within your business. And to be honest, there are people that aren't as capable as others. But this is also why I have brands that are a little more technical, that some people might be afraid of. And then I have brands like Glass Doctor. Glass Doctor is owned by Neighborly. I was just visiting them in Waco, Texas.
I saw that on your Instagram. Yeah, visiting Neighborly. Yeah.
I just got back. And Glass Doctor is amazing. And they have 2 different franchises you can buy under the Glass Doctor heading. And the one I like even better is their auto division, where you can do auto, marine, like boats. And I just got off the phone with a guy before you guys in Wisconsin, and he can do like tractor glass. There's a franchisee they already have. They kill it. Some of these franchisees are doing, $5 million a year doing glass. And the hardest thing about glass isn't putting the glass on. It's with technology these days, it's what's in the glass these days, right? So you got to be careful and make sure you don't cut any wires as you're replacing glass and things. But huge money. Anybody listening could do glass, and they're willing to train anybody to do glass.
So it's interesting. There seems like there's a category for every person, and it's based on risk tolerance. But then at the end of the day, it kind of seems like you mentioned leadership a lot, right? You're owning a business. So at some point, maybe we don't have anybody listening that's worked in a managerial role or on a leadership team and has kind of scaled their way up. And that's pretty daunting for someone to go and oversee a company, right? And they're like, okay, I have my own franchise. I got to run the show. I don't know the ins and outs from marketing, sales, hiring, recruiting, HR, whatever. Like, there's a lot of things that are all encompassing within a business. What do you recommend for people, before they get into the world of franchising? Maybe they have the cash, right? And they're like, I could find the time, but to get the skill set to be able to effectively run it, I'm curious on your thoughts in that aspect because, as you mentioned, maybe there's an engineer or an introvert that's like, dude, I don't do people. I'm just not doing it. And so I don't know if it's the right fit for them. And maybe you could talk us through that. I'm not trying to get to the lazy that give you cash and do nothing, but curious.
Ryan, this is a great question. It really, really is a great question. And I'm smiling because I get this all the time. And this is where it goes back to that first phone call and how vulnerable you're going to get. Because a lot of people, they want to put up a front that, I got this money and I want to own a business. And some people really don't get vulnerable at all in the first call, and it happens a little further down the road. But the answer to your question is, what are their talents? What are their fears? What are their concerns? What area of the country they're in? And I'll give you an example. A painting franchise. That One Painter, one of the hottest franchises last year, and it will be this year. It's owned by Resi Brands. Stephen Montgomery is very young himself. He took his dad's old paint equipment and created a painting empire in Austin, Texas, doing, I think he and his corporate locations do $4 million a year now.
Is that like residential home painting? Is that what it is?
Residential home painting, exterior and interior, amazing marketing, amazing systems. You can be home-based, but it's non-technical, and you can hire college kids. You can hire this. I mean, a lot of people can be taught how to paint, just like Steven learned how to paint and built his empire when it wasn't even in college. So, there are brands that you can, it can be intimidating to hire air conditioning techs, right? If you don't know air conditioning, maybe you're younger and you're hiring a guy that's 50 to be an air conditioning tech for you. Could be intimidating for some people. Is it as intimidating to hire a college kid to paint? Probably not as much. I could tell you I have a lot of mosquito type brands, in the pest control or mosquito control category. You don't even go in the house. You're not painting. Nobody's going to tell you you didn't do your job or the paint was sloppy. You're spraying. There's a system to spray to create a barrier to ensure that you can enjoy your backyard in nice time of the year. And I have a lot of mosquito brands, Mosquito Shield, Mosquito Squad, Mosquito Joe. These things make money. Even in the cold weather states, Mr. Philadelphia over there, all you guys freezing to death today, snow and all that.
Yeah,
but guess what?
Don't remind us. Yeah, we know.
Guess what? While there's nobody spraying for mosquitoes in Philadelphia for any of those brands, let me tell you, it's seasonal. But when the weather breaks, the volume in Philly can be just as high as it can be in Florida on an annualized basis. Is that terribly intimidating to anybody to be able to do? Probably not. And if you have money, in the example you just gave me, you can work by yourself. You can leave your job and work by yourself for a period of time and build up your own confidence and work directly with leadership teams. And let me tell you, that one painter, Resi Brands is the parent company. John Maxwell, arguably the #1 leadership author ever, is a personal advisor to Stephen Montgomery and that one painter and Resi Brands.
Interesting.
You want to learn about leadership? Hang out with them.
Yeah, that would seem like a good person to learn leadership from. I'm curious. You mentioned some, the mosquito. I don't think that's anything that's like groundbreaking or new. I mean, it just sounds like it's something that people need. Is there some sort of bigger trend or an upcoming opportunity that you see maybe as 2024 hits 2025 and we move forward? Maybe the answer is no. Like, you don't even need to think that way. But I'm curious. Is there something that's you've seen? Hey, you're looking at some of the franchises. These businesses are doing more and more revenue as the years come on. I don't know if it's a tech thing or I don't know if there's any AI based franchises yet. I'm sure there will be. And
another great question, Corey. And I'm careful not to label something a trend because smart people pay attention to, well, is it a trend? Is it a fad? Is it going to stay? It's kind of like the cupcake business. When everybody and their mother had a cupcake shop or a frozen yogurt shop, I was like, oh gosh. And here's the way you can tell that something is a fad and isn't going to last. Or maybe it's trendy and it might not last. When anybody can go out and buy a yogurt machine and frozen yogurt machine and anybody can buy the yogurt, there's not much of a secret sauce per se. There is nothing proprietary at all. There's a problem. Even these mosquito brands have some proprietary nature to what they're doing, whether it's a green product or specialized training, marketing, all these different things. Sure, the barrier for entry is a little bit easier than an air conditioning brand, but you got to be comfortable with what you're getting yourself into. And really, a better answer to your question is wellness. The wellness category is exploding. I mean, years ago, it was home care, non-medical home care. Because remember the time when people would put their parents in some sort of or grandparents in an assisted living facility? They wouldn't be at home. You'd ship them off to some place where they would get taken care of. Got to be good to your kids because you don't want that to happen. My parents say that to me all the time. They're like, "You're gonna pick my home." I'm like, "Hopefully not. Hopefully you can do the home care." No, but what was a trend that is here to stay years ago is home care, non-medical home care. People do not want to be put in an assisted living facility. Both of my parents are gone. What they both have in common is that we hired home care, companion care for them through franchises. And that's what helped. I mean, I flew in to help for a while. My mom was there, but you're talking 24-hour care. People want to be in their homes. So that was a huge trend years ago that is here to stay because we call it the silver tsunami, the graying of America. They call it aging in place. People want to stay in their house. I do a lot of home care deals for that reason. But wellness in general has never been hotter. Wellness, my wife goes to Body 20. It's an EMS fitness concept. It's hot. It's these carbon fiber electrodes on a suit. They wet it down. It conducts electricity. Anybody scared yet? Because I was. And it pulses your muscles, electromuscular stimulation.
I've heard of this. Yeah, I've heard of this.
It's the best workout ever, and it's a hot franchise. They'll have 300 members before they even open the door in a small studio. Love this franchise. But, I have one called The Tox. They were on my podcast recently. And The Tox is all over the internet, and it's lymphatic massage and lymphatic drainage, anything you can do to make yourself feel better. Waxing salons, and buddy of mine owns 19 Great Clips hair salons. He's bald and doesn't add out cut hair. And when he first heard the idea of him being a Great Clips franchisee, thought it was the stupidest idea in the world.
I'm glad you said this, Lance, because you triggered something for me, like just with the wellness. I think that's such a big one. Like, I'm thinking about this, like, I don't know if any of these are franchises, but how many boutique fitness gyms I see: SoulCycle, Solid Core, F45. I mean, I can name
F45 is a franchise. SoulCycle is not.
Yeah, so like they're everywhere, and they're not like, they don't seem to be taking business away from each other. They're very like unique in terms of, oh, you're going to get this type of workout here. Everyone is super into wellness. I mean, Ryan and I are both gym guys. I have a fortunate circumstance where I can work out at a school that I coach at, but then I also go to LA Fitness. So it's like having that. And is LA Fitness a franchise? I imagine that's not.
I don't know if that's officially a franchise. I don't even know.
Okay. Yeah, but the gym and wellness and health, I don't think that's going. I think that's definitely a trend that's going upwards, not downwards, which is a good thing, I think.
No, there's a lot of wellness trends and lash lounges and personal care for women, salons, the salon suite concept of getting into a salon where real estate investors, for example, I have a lot of these for a reason, because real estate investors love it. So a salon suites concept, you can go rent a space, not even buy it. I mean, if you want to buy the shopping center, by all means, if you can. But you can rent a 3,000, 5,000 square foot space, and then you in turn are renting that like an Airbnb as well. You're renting the space out to somebody that does hair or does nails, or maybe even does massage.
The arbitrage of the commercial rent, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's all the arbitrage, and it works. It's all about cash flow. We all want cash flow. At the end of the day, that's what it is. In real estate investing, you have the equity you're building, and you build equity in a salon suites concept, even if you don't own the land.
Let me ask you this: what's the cheapest? And this is hopefully not out of left field, but I think people are probably thinking this is like, they're thinking about their cash, what they have, and maybe their time allocation. What's the cheapest franchise? How do I say this? What's the cheapest dollar amount you see people using today to get into a franchise? Is $10,000 like, dude, you're crazy? Or is it 50 to 100? Like, how much would you assume someone needs at the bare minimum to get into something?
I had a bunch of partners each get $100,000 conventional loan, not an SBA. They got $300,000 and they got into a franchise. So zero down using that. But the answer to your question is $10,000. No, 10,000. I mean, there's some travel franchises and things like that. So the least expensive or the lowest investment, I should say, that, I have ABS, American Business Systems. It's about 24 grand. It's medical billing. Medical billing can be an incredible business. You do the business development, then you do the fulfillment. There are people that make a lot of money with medical billing. It's not a problem that's going away today. That's 25 grand, and then you can get financing for that. So with your 10 grand down, you can probably get into that. I do quite a few of those deals. Most of my deals, though, even my wife's niece and her husband got a $150,000 SBA Express loan to do 1 hour heating and air conditioning. And those loans, I think they put down 20 grand into that loan. And then when you go to close, they call it post-closing liquidity. They want to see that you didn't spend your last dime, that you have another 15 grand in the bank, cash
That's
handy.
Cool.
So
cool. I know we touched on this, and our show's heavy on real estate. We kind of we talked about this, I think, pre-recording, but can you talk about how real estate plays into franchises? And the reason I bring this up is I've always heard that Starbucks has done a ton of underwriting and data analytics to decide where they put their franchises. So I'm curious on locations. Some of these are, you mentioned that they're, not virtual, but they're not brick and mortar, all of them. So I'm curious about how you walked us through the process here of, putting cash down and going through your process of finding the right fit for you. But how do you find the location? And do you start, is it something that exists already, or are you building it from the ground up? And maybe talk to how real estate plays into all this.
Every single franchise brand that does brick and mortar retail, they have a VP of development for real estate. And if they're small and they don't have that, they work with a nationwide commercial broker, and the commercial broker will have representation and a network where they can get everybody, into site selection. But, you asked a great question on the analytics side. There is so much. There are black box intelligence. There's all these amazing services today. But here's the easiest way that I feel comfortable that a brand can give you a fair predictor of success. If a brand has some sort of critical mass, maybe they have locations in 10 cities, and they're all different cities, and they have all successful locations, let's say. If you give all that data to a company like Buxton was one of the big ones. I know there's others out there that do site selection analytics, what have you. They take all of that data. What's the square footage of the location? What does ingress, egress look like? What are the amount of cars driving by every day? Like I had an old Wingstop, 65,000 cars were going by every day. I had the end cap. It was not in line, so at least I had more prominence. So, you start to put it all, what's the household income? What does the competition look like? They actually lay that out. And you could do an overlay of the entire United States based on that particular business, whatever it is, restaurant, retail, salon. And you can go to Oklahoma City and predict what corner is best in this area based on that data. Or maybe Oklahoma City isn't right. You're better off being in Tulsa, as an example. So it's pretty amazing what technology has done to help franchising. But franchises are so far advanced. Franchise companies are so far advanced because of those analytics today.
Cool. Love that. Last question for me before we get into maybe just a personal one. I'm curious, is this the type of thing where it's like you got to pay to play? And the reason, let me frame the question a little bit better than that. For example, if I'm buying a $200,000 property in a C-class neighborhood in New Jersey, I can expect that return on investment might look good on paper. You might not actually get there, being that you have to deal with X tenant problem and the level of tenant that you're bringing in. Where if you buy a $700,000 property in a great neighborhood that you can Airbnb, you're likely going to be able to, you may have to put more down on that property, but the fruits of your labor on the appreciation might show, and then you might be able to get more cash flow from a short-term rental basis. Is this similar in the franchising model where you can get into something for $25,000 or $50,000, but likely if you put $400,000, $500,000 into a business, it's the upside on it is that much higher? And maybe it could be a business 101 question, but I'm curious what you think.
No, this also goes back to perceptions in general. Restaurants are one of the biggest investments, normally speaking. So I still have an absolute ton of franchises under $300,000. And you're just going to put, if you're going to get a loan, you're putting in $60,000, then you have to have a little working capital. So who has been doing anything these days that has aspirations can't access, $50,000 or $60,000, and at the end of the day, you're going to look at that ROI and you're going to figure out pretty quickly based on the cash flow from the business. You have the ability to write a lot of those assets off. I have guys come to me all the time towards the end of the year. What franchise can I buy with accelerated depreciation? I need trucks. I need big heavy write-offs this year. So
yeah, they come to you in November trying to get it done before the end of the year too.
and you can, junk franchises. There's a lot of interesting opportunities. So look, there is a franchise for everything. So depending on someone's personal circumstances, again, in risk tolerance, I might steer somebody to one brand versus another. But, depending on your experience in real estate investing, I'm not saying don't do any real estate investing. I had a couple that came to me a couple of years ago, owned a whole bunch of different things, commercial and residential. And they came to me and said, we need a business. And I got them a business. And then we stayed in touch. I stay in touch with everybody. I even give free coaching to my clientele after they buy a franchise, and they'll call me, some more than others. And then they came back and bought another one in a completely different business. And, you know, and they sold some of their real estate. They're buying more real estate. So it's kind of ebbing and flowing depending on where you are. I mean, real estate's not always easy. And buying a business, especially if you're getting into some of these home service brands, it's pretty consistent. You know, people were panicked during the pandemic, and franchising was amazing. Now, if you owned a big restaurant or salons and things because it wasn't deemed an essential business, there was a small percentage of franchises that had problems.
Also, depending upon geographics and maybe politics, maybe that's not a conversation for another day. But
that is correct. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, this has been awesome, Lance. I think it's kind of opened up. Every now and then we do a podcast episode that it kind of opens our eyes to a new thing. And Ryan and I we've for now blocked out shiny object syndrome. We have a path we think we want to go down. But as we get older,
focused. I know that.
But the thing is, as we get older and we learn more things and we may have more a time allocated and our interests change, I think franchising is such a great option. And there are people that are probably listening right now that are like, I just need to figure out where to put my money, and this might be an amazing opportunity for them. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
My pleasure.
The last question that we ask typically at the end of the show, I'm curious. You mentioned you're 57, so you've seen the ups and downs of market cycles. You've seen a lot. You've been very successful in business, and hence why we wanted to talk to you. I'm curious, if you can go back to maybe your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give 18-year-old Lance? And it's funny, I always say I wouldn't listen to my 18-year-old self. I'm only 32,
I love that.
But I probably wouldn't. But I'm curious what you'd say to him, and knowing what you know now.
To be honest, and I rarely I don't think I've gotten asked this question in 15 years, believe it or not. I would have stayed on Wall Street with Dad, because the amount of money I could have made in a short period of time. Because when I went out on my own, some of the biggest mistakes I made were partnering with people. When I fell in love with the restaurant space, I fell in love with the most expensive, largest investment out there. And I'm a hard charger. Like, when I want to do Wingstop, I was knocking down a whole county. I wasn't doing one. And so I brought in partners, and I made all kinds of mistakes with partners. I was always a top performing franchisee, but, so when I look back at one point many years ago, I said to myself, damn it, if I would have stayed on Wall Street and collected even more money than I had at the time from other things, I would have been so much better.
Interesting. So staying longer at something and learning more about it before diving all the way in. So
build up your cash and be very careful with partners. Partners can be great, but partners can be pretty bad if you're not careful. And I had a bad attorney in the early days that gave me bad advice, and but I learned. Nothing fatal.
Cool. So let me parlay that. When you talk about partners, I think a lot of people tend to, as they're going on into their entrepreneurial ventures, they're like, I might be able to go faster if I go with a partner, and maybe we can leverage each other's skill sets to climb this mountain. A question for you is, what did you learn along the way? You don't have to share who it was, what exactly, how bad it went down, but
I'll give you Social Security numbers. No,
Cool. But in between, like, it's great advice, but I almost want to know a little bit more nitty gritty. Like, how did you navigate and weather the storm? Like, what didn't work for you in terms of the partnerships? What worked well, and then what would you not do again?
There were gray areas in the agreements. Like, I had a group when I was getting an SBA loan, like a third SBA loan. I got a bridge loan from a group that got a little piece of equity. I'll never forget. I got a phone call from one of their assistants saying, I got this interest payment, but you owe us even more money, because part of our deal was there was a little piece of equity, but there was a debt component to it as well, where they would get a piece of the cash flow logically until that debt was paid. Well, all of a sudden they're asking for even more money, and there was a gray area in the agreement. And I remember going to my attorney saying, "What are they talking about? This wasn't the agreement." And then my attorney did one of those head scratching type things, like, well, I can kind of see why they think that. And I was like, oh, shit.
That's never a good sign.
It's never a good sign. But here's what it comes down to. it's all about roles and responsibilities and being incredibly clear. You got to be black and white. There can't be gray. And yeah, I mean, look, and I did a private placement. I had an amazing burger place that was kind of famous in Vegas. People still ask about it. I'll never forget. I had another attorney did a private placement to raise a bunch of money. He said he can do it. It was a disaster. I ended up putting in all the money. And, it's funny. The thing that should be the easiest in some instances is raising money. And in the old days, I failed at that miserably. I was running a business like most people can never figure out. I was always that top high performer in operations and running businesses, but I wasn't good at putting money together or putting appropriate partners together in the old days. Maybe now it's a lot easier with the internet, but so over time, look, I have the dream gig now. Instead of retiring, I just get to help people, and I actually make a lot more money than I ever thought doing this.
It's great when you can get to a point in your career, and obviously Ryan and I aren't there yet, but we do like to provide free value even along the journey. We don't feel like we need to be 100% experts to do that, but it's great to get to a point where you feel like all the knowledge, all the losses, all the things that you do well, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, you can share, and that's part of that passion that you have, or I don't think you'd be doing it right now. It sounds like you could probably.
I have so much fun, and it was about 2 years ago. My wife was miserable after the pandemic, miserable being a school principal. She made great money, and I said, honey, it's time for you to retire. She goes, I can? What do you mean you can? You don't like it anymore. Of course you can. We don't need your money. And she goes, well, if I work another 7 years, I'll max out my pension. It's like, we don't need that money. Oh, great. I'll retire. And she did. Yeah. So I get to be with her every day, and we travel, and we do whatever the heck we want. As long as I have an internet connection or a phone, I could conduct business. I work with people 7 days a week.
It's a great feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. Lance, this has been awesome. I'm sure there's people that are curious that want to reach out to you, that want to learn more about you, what you do, and then maybe use your services. So if somebody's interested, I know you we mentioned that they can DM you something. Is Instagram, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
It's funny. My team said to me, you have leads on Instagram you didn't check from earlier today. And I was like, I love it. So they're jumping in, answering those. But DM me Juice so I know where you came from. DM me Juice on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. We check all platforms. One of my websites is just my name, lancegraulich.com, lancegraulich.com, Graulich. You can reach out
your Instagram for people.
Lance.graulich.
Lance.graulich, and that's Graulich for people that are listening. So, Lance, this is awesome, man. We had a very unique episode, and we like having these because we talk a lot of real estate and entrepreneurship in general, and this is just a new form for us. So we want to thank you for coming on, sharing your knowledge, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you over this past hour.
Keep doing what you're doing, boys. Doing an awesome job, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.